Short Haul, a short journey to the lives of real people with life lessons just for you. I hope you're feeling it, for it's that time again to join me, your host, Willie Hall. So, grab your favorite drink and relax, or cruise down the road while you enjoy another journey into the lives of real people, having food for the soul. Food that entertains and feeds all people, both young and old. And don't be surprised if your podcast host shares some of his own pot of gold. Dear listener, thanks again for joining me, your host, Willie Hall, for another story from the lives of real people having life lessons. Today's story I've titled, Leader, Are You a Megalomaniac in the Making? If so, an Abu Talal might fool you. I probably got you wondering, dear listener, so let me go ahead and lay a little bit of background before I dive into the real-life story. A few definitions are in order. First definition of a megalomaniac. I've taken this from vocabulary.com. They say a megalomaniac is a pathological egotist, that is, someone with a psychological disorder with symptoms like delusions of grandeur and an obsession with power. We also use the word megalomaniac more informally for people who behave as if they're convinced of their absolute power and greatness. A second definition draws from Oxford Languages. They say a megalomaniac is a person who is obsessed with their own power. And lastly, the third definition drawn from Cambridge Dictionary says a megalomaniac is someone who has an unnaturally strong wish for power and control, or thinks that they are much more important and powerful than they really are. So you might be asking, well, how do you spot a megalomaniac? Mayo Clinic lists several things. One, they have a sense of entitlement and require constant, excessive admiration. A megalomaniac expects to be recognized as superior even without achievements that warrant it. They exaggerate achievements and talents, and they're preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, and beauty. Now I'm going to focus in on a particular megalomaniac who's rather famous in history. The excerpts I'm drawing from come from an article titled Saddam Hussein, Portrait of a Megalomaniac. Now 65, he remains a cruel, pitiless despot. This article is drawn from Nation World online article written by Lisa Hoffman of Scripps Howard News Service, and the article is dated, don't forget this, October 11th, 2002, which was a few months before the start of Gulf War II in 2003. Now, let me borrow from this article and read verbatim several excerpts to give you some insights into Saddam Hussein and his thinking. The article says, he wears European designer suits cut specially to hide his growing paunch. Using special black dye imported from France, his barber daily touches up his still thick shock of hair and signature mustache to hide any hint of gray. In another place, it says, to hide his limp, he avoids taking more than a few steps at a time in public. Too vain to wear his glasses when giving speeches, he reads from a text written in huge letters by his staff. In 2002, his 23-year Stalinesque regime remains the province of brutality and fear, and he retains an iron grip on power. The picture that emerges is one of a cruel despot who can be charming and warm, a little educated, though intelligent man who fancies himself a student of history. He is an unpious Muslim who nevertheless has manufactured a family tree to show his direct descent from the Prophet Muhammad, and he is building what he claims will be the biggest mosque in the world. According to former mistress Parasola Lampsos, Saddam on occasion likes to don a cowboy hat, sip whiskey, and smoke Cuban cigars, gifts of Fidel Castro, while watching videos of his Iraqi enemies being tortured. Saddam was an admirer of British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Soviet despot Joseph Stalin. A typical day for Saddam begins before dawn after a sleep of no more than 5 hours. Obsessed with security, he rarely stays more than a night or two in the same dwelling, of which he reportedly has scores in Baghdad and beyond. All his food is tested for poison and radiation, as are his hair dye and even the clothing of many of his visitors, some of whom are required to disrobe and bathe before being allowed into Saddam's company. So fearful of assassination is Saddam that he brings his own chair with him when he travels abroad so no one can booby-trap his seat. His pools are tested hourly for contaminants or toxic substances. Reported to be equally obsessed with cleanliness, Saddam prefers to be kissed on the shoulder rather than the cheek to limit the spread of germs, ex-Mistress Lampso said. He commonly is soft-spoken and polite during meetings, sometimes displaying a self-deprecating humor, but always sitting in a higher chair than anyone else. Those in attendance nervously scribbled down every utterance of their leader, well aware of the violent fate that awaits those who cross Saddam, even in the most innocuous of ways. Once, the health minister dared to mildly criticize the president, only to be ordered immediately shot by Saddam. Another minister was executed for interrupting him. But sometimes Saddam has been known to weep upon reflecting on those he has condemned. Those unflailingly loyal are rewarded with fancy cars, homes, and other riches. More often pitiless and brutal, Saddam's violence has bloodied his family as well. In 1995, 2 of his 3 daughters and their husbands fled Iraq, only to be lured back by Saddam's promise of forgiveness. Within a month of their return, however, both husbands were executed by a posse led by Saddam's eldest son, Uday. Also undimmed since the Persian Gulf War, Saddam's cult of personality. A 19-volume biography of him is required reading for government officials. Baghdad remains plastered with hundreds of huge statues of Saddam and thousands of portraits. Iraqi citizens who must memorize a growing catalog of songs venerating Saddam know better than to speak anything but praise of him publicly. And lastly, from this same article, he sees himself as the savior of the Arab world, the modern incarnation of the ancient king Nebuchadnezzar. Now that I've laid the background and gave you a classic illustration of a megalomaniac, let me now delve into a personal experience I had sometime between March 2009 and August 2010. I was working for the U.S. Department of State as the Forward Presence Officer or Senior Governance Specialist in Saladin Province, Iraq. I was responsible for 5 district and 4 sub-district governments during that time frame. One of the gentlemen that I met was the Director General of the Beji Oil Refinery, Dr. Ali Al-Beidi. He was not only the Director General of the Beji Oil Refinery while the U.S. forces were there and during my time between 2009 and 2010, but he also served in that position even under the tail-end reign of Saddam Hussein. Well, one day while we're having dinner, Dr. Al-Beidi tells me a really fantastic story. It was just, you hear it the first time, you're like, I can't even believe this. This is crazy. He tells me about this uneducated man that he termed Abu Talal. Sometime before Gulf War II and after Gulf War I, sometime between 1990-91 and 2003, Abu Talal comes to Dr. Al-Beidi in his hometown of Beji. And Abu Talal says, Dr. Al-Beidi, you must get me an audience with Saddam. And Dr. Al-Beidi's, but why? He said, I had this dream just the other night, and I had these detailed plans of how to build this missile that would guarantee to shoot down American fighter jets. But Dr. Al-Beidi says to Abu Talal, you have no education, you don't know how to read, you don't know how to write. What makes you think that this vision of these plans will actually work? He says, oh, they will, trust me, they will. And Dr. Al-Beidi said to Abu Talal, I'm not going to get you an audience with Saddam. But he said, no, you must. Then Dr. Al-Beidi said to Abu Talal, but don't you realize if you do get an audience with Saddam and he doesn't like what you say, it could be the end of your life? He said, oh no, our great leader Saddam, if he hears my dream, he will believe me and he will give me all the support I need. Well, Dr. Obeidi dismissed Abu Talal's request, and some time passed by, and Dr. Obeidi's in his house watching Iraqi television. And on Iraqi television, there was this grand event that was being televised of Saddam, who was going to recognize the great scientists and engineers that have done wonderful things for the country of Iraq. And up on this platform, there was all these scientists and engineers seated, waiting to be honored by the great leader Saddam. And in the midst was none other than Abu Talal, the man who had no education, who had this, according to him, this vision, this dream of these detailed plans of how to build this missile guaranteed to shoot down American fighter jets. Immediately, Dr. Obeidi said to me, I about fell out of my chair. I looked at that television. I picked up the phone. I contacted one of my friends in Baghdad. I said, do you know this Abu Talal? How did he get up on that stage? He said, oh, let me tell you the story. Somehow or another, Abu Talal managed to go ahead and get in contact with one of the close inner circle advisors that surrounded Saddam. Convinced this man that his dream would be something that Saddam would love to hear and would support. Now, you understand, ladies and gentlemen, I just gave you a background on the life of Saddam and the type of man and the type of thinking that he had. He was a man you didn't play around with. Either one, he could greatly reward you with all kinds of riches and good things in life, but the moment you cross him, it could be the end of your life. What happens with those close inner circles of advisors, when they live with a man like that who rules by fear and intimidation, their focus primarily becomes to make the boss happy. Don't say anything that's going to upset the boss because it might be your misfortune. So sure enough, he convinced this inner circle advisor, gained an audience with Saddam, and he loved the idea. And he said, give this man a job in one of our factories here in Baghdad so he can begin working on his vision, his dream of building this missile guaranteed to shoot down American fighter jets. And oh, by the way, Dr. Obeidi informed me that he got about $100,000 equivalent for telling that story to Saddam. Well, some time goes by. I don't recall exactly how much, but Dr. Obeidi said the plant manager, where Abu Talal was assigned to work on his dream and his vision, came to him one day and said, now, Abu Talal, you and I realize that you fooled Saddam and there's no such thing as a missile that's going to shoot down American fighter jets. You fooled him. Well, he said, no, it's true. It's going to happen. You just got to give me more time. Well, somehow or another, Abu Talal got word back to that inner circle advisor, and there was this unofficial deal between the plant manager and the inner circle advisor. Hey, let's go ahead and just keep Abu Talal happy by removing him from the plant and sending him back to his hometown and setting him up a workshop where he can work on his dream forever how long he wants. You understand, the inner circle advisor, he sure did not want that plant manager to get word back to Saddam that Abu Talal fooled him, because it might mean the end of that inner circle advisor's life. So you can understand why this deal was worked out. Well, again, more time went by, and of course there's no missile that ever came to fruition. But Dr. Obeidi came in contact with Abu Talal again, and Abu Talal said to him one day, Dr. Obeidi, I had this dream, this vision. And Dr. Obeidi said, well, what is it now? He said, I had this dream of this 3-headed dragon. One head, George Bush. The other head, Tony Blair. The other head, Ariel Sharon. And oh, by the way, Saddam was on this white horse with a sword drawn, getting ready to slay the 3-headed dragon. And I saw in my dream that this painting was up on the side of the 3-story tall building. And what I need you to do for me is get me an audience with Minister of Defense Ali Hassan Abd al-Majid al-Takriti, also known as Chemical Ali. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you must understand that Chemical Ali was a barbarous man. He was the one that basically gave the authorization to drop the chemical weapons and bombs upon the Kurdish people in the northern part of Iraq. And of course, Dr. Obeidi says there's no way that Minister of Defense Ali Hassan will be the guest speaker at your grand opening on the unveiling of this large painting. He said, "Oh, I know when he hears it, he's going to be there for sure." Well, make a long story short, guess who shows up and plays the part of the guest speaker? None other than Minister of Defense Ali Hassan, also known as Chemical Ali. Well, now time's getting closer towards the commencement of hostilities in 2003 with Gulf War II. And more Iraqis are wondering, or thinking, hey, sure enough, the Americans are coming. So, again, Dr. Abedi met Abu Talal again and said, as the war was drawing nearer, Dr. Abedi said to Abu Talal, "What are you going to do when the Americans finally do come and they realize you're the one that came up with the idea of this three-headed dragon with President Bush and Tony Blair and Ariel Sharon being slayed by our great leader Saddam, who's riding the white horse?" Abu Talal said, "Dr. Abedi, I've already got this worked out. I've already told my workers that the night the bombing commences, that next morning you're to go to work and paint over the top of that painting." I tell you, this is a true story, dear folks, as told by Dr. Abedi, a man with whom I had dinner one night. As I thought and pondered about that story, and about the life of Saddam and the type of leader he was, a true megalomaniac, to the worst that could be, I thought, here's some appropriate lessons learned that I think all leaders would do well to take heed. Lesson 1. Use your authority with humility and wisdom for the advancement of others, not yourself. 2. Some say absolute power corrupts absolutely as a general rule, but does it? Or is it only applicable to people not having a rock-solid moral compass mingled with humility and a love for others well beyond a love for self? 3. If you find your family and others drawing away from you or tolerating you at best, you might need a megalomaniac meter check. 4. Leaders, get off your high chair and come alongside those with whom you meet and engage, for even an elevated front office appearance might hinder frank and honest conversations with those who join you there. 5. Now that you're in charge, a vanity check might be in order. What you think got you where you are today, if centered on that one-letter word, I, will be your ruination in your personal, professional, or personal and professional life. 6. Leader, if you're given to visible and or invisible, drastic mood or temperament changes when things don't go your way, you might benefit taking a sabbatical to learn how to lead yourself before venturing again to lead others. 7. Finding pleasure in the losses or downfall of others necessitates a change in focus, dear leader. Rather, focus your efforts and that of your teams upon accomplishing the goal of bringing a unique value offering that your market demands and that maximizes return on invested capital and company growth. 8. When you're so full of yourself and thinking you're slaying the three-headed dragon, it just might be the other way around. And lastly, lesson number 9, be forewarned, megalomaniac, whether big or small, that you're not as smart as you think, for the uneducated Abu Talals of this world are metaphorically taking you to the cleaners. Again, dear listener, I appreciate you joining Short Haul for another journey into the lives of real people having life lessons. Good day. Thanks, dear listener, for joining your host, Willie Hall. I trust you found some nuggets of gold in today's real stories. Now, help me help Short Haul best serve your listening needs by entering your comments, follows, and likes below. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube so together we'll build the best and fastest growing show. A show that lifts the soul and helps bless all. So until we meet again and beyond, enjoy the life God gave you until your next journey with Short Haul.